I'm a banker and a section manager. Every day, I count cash as part of my job. If there's even a penny off, it's a big deal. After joining the company as a new graduate, that is the only thing that has remained the same, even though he became a section chief and received a salary increase. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" my boss, named Bob, yells at a newbie. "You're wasting everyone's time." His yelling echoes throughout the office, making my colleagues shiver. As a manager, I couldn't say anything and just had to silently watch. Hearing yelling is an everyday occurrence. But I wonder if this is really okay. Counting money, listening to yelling. The thought of becoming the one who yells dampens my desire for promotion. It's probably not his fault. There must be a problem with the work environment here that requires yelling. Other banks must not be like this. Bob has always been good to me. Outside of work, he treats his subordinates to meals, listens to their problems, showing a warm human side. The company environment that can change a person's character to this extent is truly frightening. I want to run away. Lately, I've been thinking about it more. But I can't do that. Switching to a company that pays the same salary is difficult, and I don't have the confidence. I worked hard, graduated from a prestigious university, and finally got this job. Quitting would be betraying my parents who paid me college tuition. So, I just get through each day. Coming home exhausted every day, mentally drained, unable to reply to messages from my girlfriend, Emily, munching on fried chicken I bought from the convenience store, I fall asleep on my bed, forgetting to turn off the TV. And then, I close my eyes and zone out. Suddenly, the TV catches my attention. Country living is becoming popular, and in our next segment, we'll meet a man who moved to the countryside and renovated his home from scratch using DIY techniques. I listen to the TV host's words. "Wow, what a lovely home. What's this?" "This is a wood-burning stove. I cut the wood from the woods and put it in here." Moving to the countryside, huh? Hearing that much, I opened my eyes and turned my face towards the TV. The man featured in the program was of my generation. He had renovated an old country house by himself and was living in it. Wow, that's amazing. Watching him, my heart leaped with excitement. When was the last time I felt this thrilled? I want to try it. That's what I thought. But no, calm down. It's impossible for me. I can't give up my current position. Besides, the faces of my parents kept floating in my mind and wouldn't leave. Living surrounded by nature in the countryside, it's like a dream. But after all, it's just a dream. Because it will never come true, because it is a dream, I can imagine it and enjoy it. That's reality. I slowly close my eyes and fall asleep. Then, one day, while living these days, my grandpa, he passed away in his sleep, my father says with a trembling voice over the phone. Really? But he had a good long life, didn't he? Yeah, he did. I was on my way to my grandfather's rural home to say goodbye. This place is also where my father was born, and I often visited here as a child. Traveling through a road between mountains, the clear air circulates through my body. Nature really does feel good. I hurry to my grandpa's house while enjoying the scent of the trees. Huh, what's this? When I arrived, the front door was in shambles, different from my childhood, with holes in it. It wasn't just the door that was worn out. The recent typhoon damaged it. Said my grandma in the living room. She's 85 but still lively, though much older than before. With Grandpa gone, living alone in this house is going to be lonely, she muttered weakly. Hearing this, my mother continued. Yes, it's tough here without a car for shopping, and just living can be difficult. Well, I have no one to rely on anymore, she said with a trembling voice, looking at Grandpa's peaceful face. Seeing all this made my heart heavy. Grandma looked at me and said, I'd be happy if you, Kay, could take care of this house. Me. I was surprised to be mentioned. Dad also spoke to me. Well, why not? Grandpa loved you, Kay. He'd be happy. Hold on. But Dad, don't you think it's better for me to continue as a banker? But Dad shook his head. You look so distressed now. Maybe banking isn't right for you. I was surprised he saw right through me. You're misunderstanding something. I just want you to lead a happy life, not to work in misery. I'm not worried about the college tuition. It doesn't matter if your education isn't relevant. As long as you're happy, that's what counts. Mom, sitting beside him, nodded in agreement. Grandma added, Really, having you here would make life easier. That was the moment I decided. I'll move to this countryside. Thank you for everything over the years. I confided in Bob about quitting my job. What? Are you serious, Kay? Moving to such a rural area? What about your job? I've decided to work at a factory for agricultural machinery owned by my grandmother's acquaintance. I see, but leaving such a well-paying bank job, you must be out of your mind. Yes, well, I guess so. I gave her a smile at Bob's face. But those words didn't affect me anymore. After resigning, I moved immediately. Having Kay with us is truly reassuring. Oh, there's Mary from across the street walking this way. We should greet her. Grandma was delighted, proudly telling the few neighbors about me. Oh my, such a wonderful grandson has come. How envious. Nice to meet you. I'll do whatever I can, so please feel free to ask for help anytime. Oh, how reliable. Thank you, likewise. The neighbors welcomed me warmly. Starting today, I'll be working here. My name is Kay. Applause broke out among the employees. Having a young person join is a great help. The company's average age is 60, with many pensioners. Their backgrounds vary. Some juggle farming, others are town council members, and there are former self-defense officers and teachers. The seniors patiently taught me the job, and their diverse life experiences made for enjoyable break-time conversations. Unlike before, this job requires manual dexterity, but even if I make a mistake, they reassure me, it's okay, don't worry. They praise good work, providing a sense of security. The salary is indeed lower, but I'm genuinely happy here. There are no convenience stores nearby, and the nearest supermarket is in the next town, but the warmth of the people here is a treasure. I felt more at peace than when I was working at the bank. Though it meant a long-distance relationship with Emily in New York, we managed to meet once a month at a midway point for a date. On days off, I did DIY around the house, making it more accessible for Grandma. We went shopping and to the doctor together. Kay, I'm so glad you came. Thank you. She always says thank you. I feel happy when I see Grandma smile. The hard times at the bank seemed like a distant memory. As a year was about to pass, Emily proposed to me, asking, "Will you marry me?" I was surprised, but she had always shown interest in countryside living and wanted to start our rural life together as soon as possible. I said yes, and we decided to have a wedding. We chose New York, our hometown, for the wedding. I thought about who to invite and decided to ask not only my current colleagues, but also Bob, my former boss from the bank, with whom I still kept in touch. The wedding went smoothly, and everyone invited attended. Young love is wonderful. Thank you for deciding to move here with him. Saying that, my colleagues from the agricultural machinery factory also celebrated with me. Most of them stayed for the after-party as well. Of course, my colleagues and my former boss, Bob, were there. Since we couldn't talk much at the wedding, I took the opportunity to talk to them. Bob, long time no see. Thank you for coming today. Bob, who had been drinking, had red eyes. It was a great wedding today. Thanks for inviting me. He seemed pretty drunk. Come to think of it, he was always bad with alcohol. But seriously, leaving a bank in New York to work at a small-town factory in Nebraska, that's unbelievable, and the salary must be so little, right? At those words, the people around us turned to look. Of course, my colleagues from the agricultural machinery factory were among them. Bob continued, smirking. What's so great about working in a small-town factory in Nebraska? I can imagine it's fun working with old-timers. You probably don't even make anything decent. That comment really got to me. I raised my voice and said, that's not true. We make great products. Take back what you said, right now. But Bob, drunk, replied condescendingly. You must be regretting it, right? Your salary is gone down. You shouldn't have changed jobs. I'm happy with my career change. Sure, my salary is less, but I'm much more at peace now than when I was a banker. A calm life is my happiness, and I'm living a richer life than before. Then, a voice called out from afar. Is that Bob? It was Thomas Smith, a colleague from the agricultural machinery factory. Recognizing Bob, I had received a message from Thomas that he would join the after-party, and it seemed he had just arrived. Wait, Mr. Smith, Bob exclaimed in surprise. Wow, it's been a while, since the reunion 2 years ago. Confused, I asked. What do you mean? Do you know each other? Then Thomas spoke up. Bob was a student of mine back when I was teaching in New York. We've known each other for many years now. I remembered that Thomas used to be a high school teacher. I was surprised to find out that Bob was Thomas's former student and thought how unexpected these connections can be. I've heard about it. You've been speaking quite poorly of our factory. Bob remained silent. But maybe your comments are due to stress. Bob, weren't you laid off from your company? I heard from your classmates at this year's reunion. Bob apologized, I'm sorry, and quickly left. I apologized to Thomas and my colleagues. I'm sorry my former boss said such things. Thomas replied, sorry about my former student's remarks. Unexpectedly, he apologized to me. But I was really happy to hear you say we make good products. We were actually worried if you were happy with your career change. Our factory is small. The employees are older. It's in the countryside with not much to do and hard to get around. But hearing you say you're at peace now, it's reassuring. Everyone nodded in agreement. Once the president retires in a few years, you're the only choice for the next president, so we're counting on you, Kay. Hearing everyone's feelings made me surprised and then happy. Yes, I will continue to create good products in the future. It was the beginning of living with my wife and grandma, just the three of us. Am I not in the way being here? Grandma would worry about such things. But my wife responded like this. This is Grandma's house. What would we do without you living here? Indeed, that's true. Besides, I'm a grandma's girl, so it's really comforting for me. Is that so? Saying that, the two of them smiled happily. When we had a child and my wife wanted to have a baby and my grandma became the godmother. Even now, past her 90s, Grandma is still energetic, cooking meals, making me believe we can live together for a long time. According to what Thomas told me, Bob moved to a remote countryside area and, surprisingly, got a job at a small-town factory. Apparently, he had long admired a rural lifestyle like mine but had never acted on it. So, Thomas said, his envy of me probably led to those comments. So, 5 years after the wedding, since we were in the same industry, Thomas arranged for Bob to visit our factory. I'm sorry about back then, but now, I'm also working hard at a small-town factory, trying to make good products. I'd be happy if we could cooperate in the same industry." After bowing to me, he extended his hand, which I firmly grasped. Thomas and the seniors applauded, celebrating our reconciliation. The countryside is the best place for us. So I hear you're now working at a clinic in some small village, taking it easy. In a tiny clinic like that, I bet you can't really do much. You're a doctor but can't save anyone, can you? The person I ran into at the university hospital I went to for reasons was a colleague from my student days. He talked to me as he was looking down on me. I work as a doctor in a clinic in a small village with a population of about 100 people. Indeed, I didn't have any great achievements, and he was probably better than me in skills. But apparently, he didn't know yet. Why I, who was like that, am now here at this university hospital instead of the clinic. And how our relationship will change in the future. My name is John Baker. I'm a workaholic, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Ever since I was young, I was always sickly and weak. Especially my bronchi. I often had asthma attacks at the change of seasons and had to be hospitalized when it got severe. Being hospitalized meant I couldn't go to school or play. It was nothing but a painful time for me. But the doctor in charge during my hospital stays was a kind and very cool man. Just by wearing a Johnson coat and using a stethoscope for examinations, he quickly understood my condition. It felt like magic, and I was always in better health after being discharged. Even as a child, I always admired him and wanted to become a doctor like him one day, to save children who were suffering and lonely. As I grew older, my physique improved, and naturally, I had fewer asthma attacks. Swimming, which I started at my parents' suggestion in elementary school, seemed to be good for building strength, even though I often missed it due to catching colds at first. By middle school, I had grown enough to win at the county championship. The more I practiced swimming, the more I enjoyed the results, and I became immersed in it. But even as I dedicated myself to swimming, my dream never changed. When I became a high schooler, I confessed my dream of becoming a doctor to my parents and decided to seriously aim for medical school. They supported me, and I was motivated in my studies. However, a classmate named Michael Johnson often made sarcastic comments and picked on me. "Hey you! What? That score on the last test, wasn't it kind of strange? What do you mean? I mean, there's no way you could score that high." I was surprised when he directly said that after I did well on a regular test. The only thing in common with Michael was that we were in the same class. I didn't really have much to do with him, honestly. We had barely even spoken a few times. Despite that, Michael seemed to have something against me for some reason, and when I did well on a test, he would say things like, "Did you cheat?" behind my back, or if I did well in a swimming competition, he would spread false rumors among my teammates to isolate me in the swim team. Luckily, my teammates knew me well, so nothing came of it, but I couldn't understand why he was doing this. I thought about asking him why, but if he didn't like me and was harassing me for that reason, it could have just made him angrier, so I decided to ignore it. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't think of a reason for him to dislike me, and since he almost messed up my social life, I had no good impressions of Michael. But since it was clear he didn't like me, I made sure to keep my distance. Despite some issues with Michael, I managed to balance swimming and studying and was accepted into a private medical school. It was the university with the hospital I had been admitted to when I was young, and when I decided to become a doctor, I had no hesitation in choosing this university as my first choice. All my hard work paid off, and I passed the entrance exam on my first try, celebrating with tears of joy with my parents. But I was utterly surprised when I saw Michael on campus during enrollment. I had no idea he was also aiming to be a doctor, and he clearly showed his distaste when he realized I was there. However, unlike in high school, I don't think he said anything behind my back. Maybe he was too busy with the much harder studies compared to high school. Michael seemed to be very kind to everyone else in our class. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "What's up?" "I'll help if I can." "Thanks. It's about this question here." His grades were top of the class and was known as diligent and talented. If anyone had questions about their studies, they'd go to Michael, who became a reliable figure for everyone. Yet, he still glared at me and made sarcastic remarks whenever we met. "Why are you even in mid-school? Did you cheat to get in?" When he muttered that to me in a voice only I could hear as we passed each other, I finally reached my breaking point. "Have I done something to you?" "What?" "I don't know why you dislike me so much, but if I've done something to upset you, I'll apologize. Please tell me, because it's hard not knowing what I did wrong." "Huh? What? If you have something to say or something you don't like, why not say it to my face? It's cowardly to do it as we pass by. And please stop spreading strange rumors. We're not kids anymore, and it's honestly annoying." Michael seemed surprised by my response, glared at me silently for a moment, then walked away. One day, while I had a free period at university, I was on my way to see a professor when I ran into my childhood doctor. "Are you Dr. Johnson?" "You are." "It's you, Dr. Johnson. I'm John. You might not remember me, but I was frequently sick as a child and you took care of me." "John, wow, it's been a while. You look well, and that's a relief. So, why are you here?" "I'm studying to be a doctor at this university. I want to be like you." "Really? I can't express how happy I am. You've grown up so well, and to think you recognized me so quickly, I'm really touched." Dr. Johnson, who seemed deeply moved, told me he was now the head doctor of the university hospital. "The head doctor? That's right. Doesn't really suit me, does it?" "Yes, it does." "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were the head doctor and spoke too casually." "Don't worry about it. It's been a long time since someone looked at me with such genuine eyes." "Thank you." I hadn't been hospitalized since my health improved, so I was surprised and couldn't hide it when I learned Dr. Johnson had become the head doctor. "What brings you here today, Dr. Johnson?" "Oh, I was just heading back from speaking with a professor." "I see." As we were chatting, I heard footsteps from behind and a familiar voice saying, "What are you doing here?" I turned around and saw Michael. I thought he came to make another sarcastic remark to me, but his gaze was not on me but on Dr. Johnson in front of me. "Michael, what's up? Did you need something from me?" Dr. Johnson called Michael by his first name in a friendly manner, and I was surprised to realize they knew each other. As if I just had something to discuss with the professor. "Hey, Michael. Move, you're in the way." Michael deliberately bumped into my shoulder as he passed and ignored Dr. Johnson calling after him. As we watched him leave, Dr. Johnson unexpectedly said, "Sorry about that. Did he hurt you? My son can be a bit of trouble." "Your son, Michael is." Did you forget my last name? Your name, oh." I never connected the dots that they were father and son, despite sharing the same surname. Michael used to be a much more expressive kid. He always smiled brightly at me, but at some point, he started behaving like that towards me. I think he felt lonely because I was always busy with work and couldn't give him much attention. Dr. Johnson said this while looking as if he was still seeing Michael's retreating figure, his eyes filled with kindness. His expression was a mix of sadness and melancholy. Even though he wasn't crying, it somehow looked like he was. That expression stayed with me. Years passed, and we all successfully passed our national exams. I officially became a licensed doctor. When choosing where to work, I, having no particular preference, ended up in a remote hospital that no one else wanted to go to. After a few years of training there, I moved to a clinic in a small village with about 100 residents, which have been without a doctor for a long time. The village, mainly populated by elderly people, was serene, surrounded by the sea and mountains. The air was fresh, and the villagers seemed to live by helping each other. I arrived at the small clinic in the village, a complete stranger and inexperienced. I was an outsider, fresh out of training, and not yet confident enough to proudly call myself a doctor. I feared being disliked or told to leave because I wasn't skilled enough. But despite these fears, the villagers welcomed me warmly. "We are lucky to have you, Dr. Baker. Thank you so much for coming to our little village." I get nervous with young doctors. The village elders treated me like their own grandchild. Within a few days, I began to match faces with names and enjoyed my days there. When I asked how they managed when they got sick, they said they had to travel at least an hour to the nearest large town, which was quite a hardship. "That's why we are so grateful you came to this village. It might be inconvenient here, but we appreciate your help." "The pleasure is mine. I look forward working here." However, in the village, there were no nurses and I was the only doctor. Not knowing when or what kind of situations I'd be called out for, and to provide the best possible treatment with limited facilities, was more challenging than I could have imagined. There were many villagers with chronic illnesses, and despite my best efforts, there were times I couldn't save them, which brought me immense sadness and regret. But the villagers would encourage me, saying, "You're the hope to this town, and thanks to you, we feel like we could live a little longer." I couldn't perform advanced treatments same as big hospitals. I couldn't even do surgeries properly on my own. So, sometimes, there were things I just couldn't handle. I had to work with hospitals in bigger towns and refer patients there when necessary. But this made me think that there must be things that can only be done in this village. Experiences I can only have here. Growth that's only possible here. I decided to grow as a doctor in this village. With that in mind, I worked tirelessly. It was one day, about 20 years after graduating from university. I was visiting the university hospital I had been admitted to as a child, on my way back from a medical conference. As I walked through the hospital, smiling at the nostalgia of my vague memories, someone approached me. "You, aren't you Michael?" The person who looked at me with widened eyes was Michael, who seemed a bit aged. Perhaps due to our intense work, it seemed like we both had more gray hairs. But despite being adults now, Michael quickly reverted to his disdainful expression and started with his sarcasm. "So I hear you're now working at a clinic in some small village, taking it easy." "Yeah, that's right. I'm the head of surgery at this hospital now. I've been successful in high-risk surgeries and received recognition for my achievements." "Well, that's impressive. Head of surgery, you always stood out among our peers. Well done." When I sincerely praised Michael, he seemed displeased with my response and glared at me, his tone becoming harsher. "In a small clinic like that, I bet you can't really do much. You're probably just keeping the elderly company, right? The facilities must be outdated and unusable, and you can't properly perform surgeries alone, can you? You don't have many accomplishments, do you? After all, as a doctor, you probably can't save anyone, right?" Michael, who hadn't changed a bit since those days, still looked down on me. Just as I was about to argue that his accusations were unfair, I heard a voice searching for me and stopped speaking. "Mr. Baker, I've been looking for you." The voice belonged to a female nurse who, upon spotting me, hurried over. Michael also turned his gaze toward the nurse in surprise. "Mr. Baker, I mean, Dr. Baker, the new head doctor. My name is Emily. I'm a nurse. I look forward to working with you starting today." Emily's words left Michael wide-eyed and speechless. "Hey, what did you just say?" I said, "I look forward to working with you starting today." "No, before that, what did you call him? Did you mean when I referred to him as the new head doctor, Dr. Baker? New head doctor? What are you talking about? Haven't you heard? This is Dr. Baker, who has been appointed as the new head doctor here." "Head doctor? You mean you?" Michael stared at me in disbelief. I nodded, confirming, "Actually, that's right," leaving him at a loss for words. Well, actually, I had been working at a hospital affiliated with this university. My assignment to the small village was also in the form of a dispatch from the university. My contribution to regional medical development was recognized, and I was invited to become the head doctor. The clinic in the village already had a successor lined up, and we have been working together for about 3 months, so the transition was smooth. A nurse was also going to join the clinic, which would expand the range of treatments available and save more lives. I thought Michael, working in this hospital, knew all about it, but it seemed to be news to him. It was a complex feeling, but there was nothing I could do as I had been appointed. "So, Emily, was it? Did you need me for something?" "Oh, yes, that's right. Dr. Johnson, the current head doctor, wants you." "Got it. I'll head over there right now. Thank you." As I responded to the nurse, Michael glared at me and walked away. "Hello, it's John. Please, come in." "Thank you." Entering the head doctor's office, there was Dr. Johnson. "John, it's been a while. I'm sorry to have called you back here so suddenly." "No, I am honored to be appointed to such a distinguished position. I believe you'll do well." "Thank you." Dr. Johnson, being of advanced age, was feeling a decline in his strength. He seems to be getting sick more often, and his absences from work have been increasing. For this reason, he told me he plans to retire from the field soon and invited me to take over. I was thrilled to hear the words from the doctor I've always admired, but Dr. Johnson's son is Michael. He told me he is the head of surgery, and his accomplishments are indeed remarkable. Wouldn't it make more sense for his son to take over, I thought, and so I asked, "I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but why did you choose me over your son?" Dr. Johnson quietly shook his head. "My son, Michael, as his father, it may sound strange for me to say this, but I believe he is outstanding as a surgeon." "Then, shouldn't he be the one to become the head doctor? His skills are great and I rely on him. He's trusted by everyone. I think he's fit for the role, and I know he would do well as the hospital director." "Then why not? I still want him to continue working hard to save lives on the front lines." Dr. Johnson, as the head doctor, once the role is taken, it's difficult to be involved on the front line with patients. It's important to care for the patients in front of you, but that's not enough for a head doctor. You must always have a broad perspective. In that sense, you, who have demonstrated your skills in various places, is the right person for the job. You understand the feelings of patients, which is important for both doctors and patients. "I'm honored. I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but have you discussed this with your son?" "Well," Dr. Johnson said with an embarrassed smile, when I tilted my head, he confessed, "It's hard for us to be honest when we're face to face. We hardly have time to talk, and even if we do, Michael probably won't listen to me." "That couldn't be." "No, it's true. With all due respect, Dr. Johnson, by appointing me as your successor, there might be some misunderstandings. How about having an open and honest conversation with him? I'm sorry if I'm overstepping, but I believe leaving things as they are won't work." "Open and honest. Yes, you're right." Dr. Johnson looked distant and smiled kindly. "Then, I'll take my leave now. I know it's tough, but I'm counting on you." "Thank you." It was when I was about to leave the office that it happened. I heard a groaning sound followed by a thud, and I quickly turned around. "Dr. Johnson, what happened?" Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson had collapsed on the floor from his chair, unconscious. I borrowed a stethoscope nearby and placed it on his chest. Judging from his heart and breathing sounds, his condition didn't seem good, and I broke out in a cold sweat. "Is anyone there? Someone, come quickly!" I shouted from inside the office, and the nurse who had called me earlier rushed in. What happened? Dr. Johnson collapsed. It's urgent. Call someone. No, declare code blue. Hurry. I'm on it. The nurse frantically used the intercom to relay the message. Immediately, an announcement was made over the hospital's pass system. Code blue, near the west side of the 10th floor. All available staff, please respond immediately. Code blue. A hospital's cryptic term for an emergency. Some say Dr. Blue or something similar, but our hospital uses code blue. Now, all available doctors and nurses will gather here. Probably faster than searching for doctors to call them here. I soon heard footsteps, and the door to the head doctor's office opened. The first to rush in was Michael. His face was pale as he saw Dr. Johnson on the floor and ran towards me. Hey, John, code blue, what's going on? It might be an acute aortic dissection. Prepare for tests immediately. What? Get a stretcher here, now. Yes, sir. I directed the arriving doctors and nurses for tests, and as soon as the stretcher was brought in, we began urgent procedures. The test results confirmed an acute aortic dissection, requiring immediate surgery to prevent the worst-case scenario. However, today was the day of a medical conference. Other surgeons, apart from Michael, were either attending it or already in surgeries and couldn't be called back immediately. Michael, you're the only one I can rely on. I can't operate on my father. I don't have the confidence to save him. Michael was trembling, holding his head in his hands. I stood in front of him, holding his shoulders firmly. Have you always approached surgery with this attitude? Just a few moments ago, you were boasting about handling high-risk cases to me. Was that a lie? It's not a lie, but it's different with my father. It's not different. Whether it's your father or a child, in front of you is a patient with an aortic dissection, right? You know best what will happen if we leave him like this, don't you? I know that, but... No buts. Dr. Johnson just said to me that you're a skilled surgeon. I know how capable you are too. If you can't do it, then I will. I hardly have any experience with aortic dissection surgeries. As I appealed, almost shouting, Michael seemed to awaken, his eyes regaining their focus. He shook off my hands, saying, "Don't be ridiculous. I can't leave it to you," and clenched his still slightly trembling hands. "I'll perform the surgery. We'll start an emergency operation right now. Prepare immediately." Relieved to see Michael regaining his usual demeanor, I watched as he gave instructions to the surrounding nurses. I was trying to calm myself down when I heard, "Hey, John. What's up? You, be my assistant in the surgery." Me. If I'm not doing it, you will, right? Then at least be an assistant and watch my surgery closely. Michael said this in a dismissive tone, and I nodded, quickly getting ready. The surgery, filled with tension, ended in great success. Dr. Johnson recovered steadily. When I visited his room in the hospital, he tried to get up happily, but I stopped him just in time. "Thank you so much. I'm glad you were there. I heard you encourage Michael. Thanks to you, it looks like I can live a little longer." "Don't mention it. There's still so much I want to learn from you. We need you to stay healthy." Haha, guess I can't kick the bucket just yet, but retirement was inevitable. "Dr. Johnson, that's not true." "No, I know my body best. I was lucky this time, but I don't know what will happen next. I know my time is limited." Dr. Johnson's smile looked somewhat sad. "Dr. Johnson, as a child, you treated me, and thanks to you, I have grown to be who I am today. You are my inspiration. I wanted to become a doctor like you, and that's what has driven me all this way." "Me, your inspiration. I never thought I'd hear such words. Hearing you say that makes my career as a doctor all the more worthwhile." While we were talking, Michael had entered the room and said bitterly, "You were always attached to my dad." I looked at Michael and suddenly had an idea. "Michael, were you jealous of me? Because Dr. Johnson was always with his patients." Hitting the nail on the head, Michael turned red and denied, "No, that's not it. What are you talking about? but it was obvious to everyone, and both I and the nurse who came to change Dr. Johnson's IV chuckled. It was just a little teasing, but it seemed to get a good reaction. Dr. Johnson was smiling happily, saying, "So it's true, so it's true." Michael, a mix of embarrassment and bitterness, admitted, "Yeah, that's right, so what? I never got to celebrate my birthdays, entrance ceremonies, or graduations with my dad. I couldn't even have a proper conversation with him, while he was always with you patients. I was jealous that he seemed to care more about his patients than his own son. I envied and hated you guys. So when I found out that one of those patients was you in high school, I was frustrated." Michael started to pour out his feelings, and Dr. Johnson listened intently, closing his eyes to catch every word. "And now, you appointed him as the next head doctor. I've been by your side in this hospital all along. I thought I'd finally have time with you, and then I thought I lost that to him again. I was shocked." Michael, "Well, but after talking openly with my dad, I understood his true feelings. He wants me to focus on my work as a surgeon, to refine my skills. That cleared my resentment." Hearing these words, I looked at Dr. Johnson, who nodded gently. "I heard that you were the one who told my dad to talk to me. I hate to admit it, but I'm grateful for this time. Thank you." Michael offered his hand, and I gladly shook it. Understanding the cause of Michael's long-standing resentment towards me was a relief. That moment marked the end of our long-standing grudges. Years have passed since then. As the head doctor, I'm involved in various daily operations. I manage this hospital, its branches across the U.S., the staff and doctors, financial aspects, and make the final decisions on patients' treatment plans. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. The list is endless. Having never studied management, there's a lot I don't know, but I'm managing with the help of my secretary. Despite preparing myself for a challenging role, actually being in this position is a daily race against time, and sometimes I regret accepting it. I remember the slower pace of life at the small village clinic and sometimes yearn to return there. But there are still areas without permanent doctors. Not only advancing medical care, but my duty also includes ensuring that existing healthcare services continue uninterrupted. Moreover, I aim to create a world where everyone can access medical care. It's important for us all to work together towards that goal. As the head doctor, I will continue to lead in dispatching doctors to rural areas. And someday, I hope to return to that village myself. That's what I thought. After Dr. Johnson's discharge, contrary to what I expected, he didn't retire but stayed at the hospital, handling tasks like health checkups that were within his capabilities. Though he had been discharged, his strength hadn't fully returned, and given his age, we couldn't predict what might happen. I've been too busy with administrative duties to work directly with patients. Saying this might sound inappropriate, but being able to examine patients, even a little, makes me happy. I want to continue being a doctor for as long as I live. It might be a burden to others, but I want to keep going a little longer. There was nothing else I could do but nod to my mentor's words. He promised not to overdo it and to prioritize his health while continuing his work as a doctor. As for Michael, he's still active as the head of surgery. He has successfully handled many challenging cases, gaining national recognition, and patients from all over the country seek his expertise. Initially overwhelmed, Michael is now earnestly striving to save every patient who trusts him. Thanks to his efforts, the hospital regularly receives thank you letters from patients who have recovered. Dr. Baker, it's almost time for the conference. Is it that time already? Thank you, let's go. After you, sir. I stood up and left the office with my secretary and headed to the conference. Even though we are all doctors, our roles vary greatly depending on our positions. But as medical professionals, our ultimate goal is to fight tirelessly to save and care for lives. We all share the same desire to help our patients. We strive daily to improve ourselves in this regard. Moving forward, I want to continue dedicating my efforts to protect people's health and save lives as a doctor. Hello, Dr. Baker. Hello, let's get started, shall we? You look like a monster. My colleague Mia suffered severe facial injuries in a traffic accident. Our boss, Steve, threw harsh words at her. Steve's remark cut through her like a sharp knife, easily wounding a woman's heart. And it slashed through the last bit of Mia's composure. Mia was looking down, covering her face with her hands. Seeing Mia's tears, I felt a surge of heat throughout my body. I approached Mia and covered her with my suit jacket from head to toe. It's all right. Leave it to me. What? Saying that, I made a call to someone. My name is David. I turned 33 this year. Born into a family of doctors, I was raised in a relatively affluent household. As a child, I was shy and extremely introverted. Even when I was taken to the park, I would always hide behind my mother. My strict father wanted me, the eldest son, to become a doctor and provided me with various forms of advanced education. However, none of them sparked my interest, and I failed to achieve the desired results. On the other hand, my brother, 3 years younger than me, was a prodigy like our father and kept delivering impressive results. Soon, my father's expectations shifted to my brother, allowing me to lead a more liberated life. Yet, I couldn't find anything I was passionate about and began to lead a self-indulgent life. Seeing my brother diligently studying to become a doctor made me feel a vague sense of frustration. As my father's attention focused more on my brother, I became increasingly cynical. The only person who loved me as I was my mother. You just need to do your best in your own way. Don't worry about it. There are many fun things ahead. No need to rush. Everything will work out. My mother was optimistic and always managed to laugh off my troubles with "it'll be all right." Strangely, whenever my mother said it's okay, I felt like things would indeed be okay. Thanks to her, I was able to lead a vibrant and lively life every day. After graduating high school, I attended a local university. I never felt dissatisfied about not being expected to excel, nor did I have a strong desire to strive for anything. The only thing that caught my interest during my university years was computer programming. Even as an adult, I preferred staying indoors, spending most of my time programming in my room. Seeing me so engrossed, my mother was very happy that I had found something I was passionate about. My mother fell ill during my second year of university. Treatment began immediately, but she started suffering from the side effects of the medication. She lost her hair and was in and out of the hospital. My mother, who was always so energetic, began to spend more time sitting silently on the sofa at home. She was someone who rarely showed weakness, but just before she passed away, I heard her express her vulnerability for the first time. Why me? I wanted to live longer. She repeated this like a delirium. She had become thin, her cheeks hollowed, and her complexion was poor. She looked so different from the mother I knew that I found myself wanting to look away. About a year into her battle with illness, my mother passed away and went to heaven. She spent her last days in tears, enduring a sad and painful time. The sight of my mother suffering left a deep trauma in me. Several years later, having overcome the loss of my mother, I joined an IT company as a system engineer and continue to work as usual. Good morning. Still slouching, I see. Come on, stand up straight and face forward. Yeah, good morning. The one who greeted me energetically this morning was my colleague, Mia. She has been a colleague since the beginning of my career, and we are the same age. I'm not good with women, and she was the only woman I could talk to easily. I still remember the day I first met her. I'm Mia, assigned to this department starting today. Nice to meet you. I'm David. Nice to meet you too. David, nice to meet you. Just call me Mia. Yes. I was quite surprised by Mia's high communication skills. Mia is a rare female system engineer in this industry. Moreover, her skills are exceptional. It's rare for women to thrive in this industry. But she is skilled and more proactive than anyone else. And she is unbeatable, being both capable and beautiful. Although she can be a bit meddlesome, Mia's endless cheerfulness has always been a great help. Her attitude towards work is also very serious and sincere. I would never say it to her face, but she was someone I respected. Hey, listen, I heard Steve is going to be assigned here. I did hear that someone from outside was coming, and it turns out to be Max's son. Mia said this, making a face of disgust. And for good reason. Our executive vice president Max's son, Steve, was notorious for bad rumors. He is 3 years younger than us, and after graduating from college, he had been with our company briefly. However, upon joining, Steve, wielding his father Max's power, caused nothing but trouble. The climax was a major fallout with the department head at the time, which even led to physical altercation. He then disappeared from the company, being sent to an overseas branch in a way that seemed like vanishing into thin air. He was always surrounded by bad rumors. No one would be happy to welcome him. With a heavy heart, we headed to the morning assembly. Then, Max, who rarely visits, came to our department with a young man in tow. Striding confidently behind Max was his son, Steve. From now on, I will entrust my son with the head of this department. He is the talent that will carry the company's future. Learn as much as you can from him. At Max's words, we exchanged glances. Looking around at everyone in the department, their expressions were indescribable. After Max finished speaking, Steve introduced himself in front of us. With me here, this company will grow even larger. Believe in me and do your best. This self-introduction turned out to be a huge blunder, plummeting Steve's reputation within the sales department. This man was either extremely confident in himself or shamelessly thick-faced. Regardless of the situation, he never lost his superior attitude. It was terrible when he insisted on accompanying me to a meeting. Can't you handle something as simple as this on your own? In the middle of our meeting, he interjected with a condescending attitude. This led to the client getting infuriated and the contract breaking down. My credibility, built over years with that client, crumbled in an instant. What have you done? That client was a valuable one who had been using our system for many years. Even when confronted, Steve was nonchalant, showing no sign of taking any responsibility. Just because they've been a long-term partner doesn't mean anything if they're not bringing in money. Profit is what matters. This is why I hate incompetence. Steve insisted he was right and shifted the blame, leaving me almost speechless. Don't joke around. I've worked hard to gain that client's trust. It was your remark that wasted all our efforts. What, are you going to stand up to me? You know I can easily fire you, right? I clenched my teeth hard. The frustration of not seeing my years of effort pay off was immeasurable. Having lost my mother, achieving results at work had become my sole purpose in life. This added to my frustration. I couldn't possibly work with such an irresponsible person. Despite being the boss, he had ruined a crucial client relationship, and I never wanted to deal with him again. But Steve's tyranny didn't stop there. Although unfamiliar with complex documents and administrative procedures, he wouldn't ask us for help due to his pride, even though he should have. When he delivered documents containing critical personal information of a client to the wrong company, it nearly led to a disaster. We apologized to the other party and managed to avert a crisis, but it could have easily threatened the company's existence. It's your fault, my subordinates, for not being attentive enough. I just did what I was told. Even though the situation didn't escalate, it was an unforgivable mistake, yet Steve claimed he had no responsibility. It wasn't just me who was at the end of my patience. Mia felt the same way. That day, we ended up going out for drinks on short notice, venting our frustrations about Steve as if to clear the air. Mia seemed to share my feelings, troubled by Steve's daily work attitude. I've been thinking the same. I accompanied him to a meeting recently, and it was tough because he spoke down to the client and us. So it wasn't just us. It's unacceptable to inconvenience our clients like this. I felt relieved knowing Mia shared my sentiments. But there wasn't much we could do, so we just vented our frustrations that day and parted ways. The next day, Mia started to counter Steve with a firm attitude. If you claim to have no faults, then please complete at least one task without relying on us at all. We will not interfere with your work. Mia's statement was completely reasonable, and Steve couldn't counter it with his usual excuses. The department erupted in applause, leaving Steve completely isolated. Embarrassed in front of everyone, Steve seemed frustrated. Mia was right. We weren't here to clean up Steve's messes. Mia, who spoke on our behalf, was admirable. However, Steve, humiliated by the incident, harbored resentment towards Mia. You'll see someday. I'll make sure to pay back this debt someday. Mumbling complaints, he returned to his desk. Thanks to Mia's straightforward and clear words, Steve became subdued. This allowed us to carry out our daily tasks without issues. Other employees were grateful to Mia, and John, the manager who suffered the most, was so happy he cried. I, too, was relieved to see Steve quiet down. Just when I thought peace had returned, something happened. Mia, who had accompanied Steve on a sales visit that day, unfortunately got involved in an accident. It was a major accident involving several cars, and Mia was rushed to the hospital and admitted. Steve was unharmed and bragged about it the next day at work. I was fine. If Mia had driven better, we wouldn't have had the accident. They should be more competent before acting so high and mighty. I couldn't help but retort to Steve's spiteful comments. Isn't that an inappropriate thing to say? Weren't you concerned, being at the scene together? Please don't say anything that would sadden Mia when she returns. Though I counted Steve's bad-mouthing Mia, he just smirked creepily. Seeing his expression gave me a bad feeling. That's if she can come back from the hospital. Steve, making unsettling remarks, seemed to hint at knowing something. The meaning of his words became clear 2 months later. When Mia returned to work after being discharged, it was a terrible sight. Mia, it's a burn. It's not pleasant to look at, right? I'm sorry. Saying that, Mia looked down and went to her desk. Normally, she would greet me with a big smile and a pat on the back. I felt a bit of loneliness as Mia went to her desk without making eye contact with me, unlike her usual self. Mia, who had come to work, had half of her face still not healed and covered in bandages. This small visible part of her skin seemed severely damaged, far different from her previously clean and smooth complexion. Her teeth were also chipped, and her cheeks appeared sunken, possibly from not being able to eat properly. Mia had become almost unrecognizable, and I couldn't find the right words to say to her. I knew she had been badly injured, but I hadn't imagined it would be to the extent of damaging half of her face. Mia sat at her desk, covering her face with one hand. Sensing the mood, no one in the sales department tried to start a conversation. As a heavy silence fell, Steve's loud laughter echoed. What's with that face? You look like a monster. I can't believe you can walk around outside with a face like that. His words, sharp as a knife, easily wounded a woman's heart and tore through Mia's barely maintained composure. Mia, no doubt, heard Steve's words too. She looked down, covering her face with her hands. but I didn't miss the slight trembling of her shoulders. Tears, I presumed, began to fall from her hands covering her face. Having worked with her for nearly a decade, it was the first time I saw her cry. She was always the one who brightened up those around her with her smile. Seeing Mia's tears, I felt a surge of heat throughout my body. I approached Mia and covered her with my suit jacket from head to toe. "It's all right. Leave it to me." "What?" Saying that, I embraced her shoulder and led her into a meeting room. "Why did this happen? Why?" Mia, reaching her breaking point, began to cry uncontrollably. She looked at me, her face tear-stained and sweaty. At that moment, I was reminded of my late mother. My mother, too, had a terrible appearance before she passed away, crying over her fate. Back then, I didn't know what to do and could only stay by her side. I had had enough of losing the smiles of those I cared about. "Mia, trust me. I will definitely help you." I said that and offered my hand to Mia. Although hesitant, when Mia took my hand, I thought to myself that I couldn't let her suffer the same fate as my mother. I firmly gripped her hand back and assured her, "I'll take care of it. I want to see you smile again." As I said this, Mia looked surprised and her tears stopped. I patted her back gently, just as she had always encouraged me. "It's okay. I'm here for you. I might not be much, but I'm here." "No, I'm really grateful. Thank you." After reassuring Mia, I immediately went to another room and called a certain person. My brother, a renowned surgeon, is someone I deeply respect. It had been a while since I last called him, so I felt a bit tense. "Hi David, what's up? It's rare for you to call. Is something wrong?" I heard a familiar voice from the other end of the line. I was worried he might not answer because it was morning, but thankfully, he did. I explained Mia's injuries to my brother and asked if there was anything he could do. He agreed to introduce me to his most reliable contact. "I'd like to see it myself. Can you come here after work?" Relieved by my brother's words, I agreed. After work, I took Mia to my brother's clinic. Can it really be fixed? The doctor who treated my injuries said it would be difficult to restore my face to how it was before, and that famous doctors have long waiting lists. If it comes into my brother or father's hands, they can heal Mia's injuries. The famous doctor she mentioned must be either my father or brother. They are among the top surgeons. I've heard them talk about a patient who had suffered burns to their face before. Mia and I entered the clinic where my father and brother were. "It's been a while. You never show your face around here." My father greeted me. Then, my brother examined Mia's facial injuries in the consultation room. He nodded as he responded, "Yes, there's no abnormality in the bones and no muscle loss. Dad said it should be manageable. You'll need to be hospitalized for a while. Next, we'll proceed with the surgery." Hearing these words, Mia, who had been downcast, brightened up, looking revitalized. After deciding on the surgery, Mia showed me a smile in a taxi on the way back. "I've been so worried that I might have to live with this face for the rest of my life. But thanks to you, David, I feel like I can go back to how I was before, and that makes me really happy. Thank you." Seeing Mia's spirits lifted, I felt relieved. But in truth, it was all thanks to my father and brother. Once my face is back to normal, I'll get back at Steve. I'll never forgive him. Suddenly, Mia became angry. I thought her anger was because of Steve's taunting words that had deeply hurt her, but it seemed there was more to it. It wasn't just what he said that time. "I'm angry about Steve's drunk driving. I'm sure he had been drinking. His driving was erratic, and that's why I tried to take over." Mia, unable to contain her anger, started talking about what happened during the accident. Mia, who didn't trust Steve at the time, accompanied him on a sales visit. Steve was driving, with Mia as the navigator in the passenger seat. However, She noticed the smell of alcohol on Steve right after they set off. Mia offered to take over due to his reckless driving, but haughty Steve refused to give up the driver's seat, leading to the accident. I'm sure he was drunk. Sometimes, I even smell alcohol on him at work. Steve commutes by car to work. If that's true, it could be a serious issue. I decided to confront Steve about it immediately. The next day, I asked him again about the accident. Mia was supposed to have surgery but decided to take more time off work for illness. Steve seemed overly pleased by Mia's absence, appearing in high spirits from the morning. I was just a passenger in Mia's car. Her driving was so rough. We collided with a car that suddenly came into our lane. Well, considering her usual behavior, it's probably her fault. As I suspected, Steve was lying. According to Mia, Steve was the one driving. Yet, Steve insisted that Mia was driving, which felt off to me. I headed straight to a room in the company. It was the surveillance room. Usually unmanned, this room records footage from security cameras located throughout the office. After work, I went there, completed the necessary procedures, and started searching through the surveillance footage. I found irrefutable evidence. My actions from then on were swift. I moved in secrecy, visiting Mia in her hospital room without telling anyone. Mia was recovering well, and while she might not return entirely to her previous state, she looked much better. For the first time, I felt grateful to have such a capable brother. When everything was in place, I came up with a plan to trap Steve. The next day, as Steve was about to leave as usual, the moment he started the car, police officers emerged from the shadows, surrounding his car. Steve, surprised by the sudden appearance of the officers, seemed flustered. As the officers slowly surrounded the car, Steve rolled down the window to inquire about the situation. One of the officers responded, "I'm sorry to bother you, but it's Traffic Safety Week, and we're conducting alcohol checks just to be safe. Would you mind cooperating?" Hearing this, Steve's face instantly turned pale. Suddenly trembling, Steve couldn't give a clear response. Well, of course not. I don't drink during work hours." Steve's agitation was evident in his behavior. The officer pressed further. "We've had reports of employees drinking during work hours, which is why we're carrying out these surprise checks." "Well, I did have a few drinks last night, so it's possible there's still some alcohol in my system." "You had a drink. You know that if alcohol is detected, it constitutes drunk driving, right? We appreciate your cooperation." The suspicious officer kept questioning Steve, which led to a discovery when they followed him home. Steve had already been involved in a hit-and-run incident. Evidence at the scene, including tire marks, confirmed that Steve was the culprit. It was also revealed that Steve suffered from alcoholism. Steve was known to drink alcohol indiscriminately, regardless of time and place. He was even drinking inside the office, and various security cameras captured him consuming alcohol. Furthermore, I found footage from a security camera showing Steve drinking in the break room before heading out on sales on the day Mia had her accident. Mia's statement was the final blow. Steve had caused an accident while drunk. The truth was his selfish doing. But what was worse was how he handled the accident. It turned out that Steve was the one driving that day, with Mia sitting in the passenger seat. This was later clarified by a police investigation. Sensing something was wrong with how Steve was driving, Mia offered to drive instead, but he stubbornly refused. After the accident, only Mia was seriously injured. He had the first responders take Mia away and then falsely reported to the police that the accident was caused by Mia. Despite his abhorrent actions, he tried to pin the driving on Mia and elusively escape responsibility. Mia, who was unaware of this, was shocked to learn the truth. Preoccupied with her facial injuries, It seems she had never even thought about who was being blamed for the accident. All these were shameful attempts by a man trying to escape responsibility. As a result, Steve was arrested by the police. Given the evidence and the gravity of his actions, the officers said he couldn't avoid punishment. Following Steve's arrest, the company decided to discipline both him and Max. Due to his son's foolish actions, Max saw decades of his efforts go down the drain. Thus, Steve faced the full consequences of his actions. He now has to live with and confront his crimes. In adulthood, it's not status, power, or ability that matters. The crucial aspect is taking full responsibility for one's actions. I hope Steve reflects on his actions and reforms. Afterward, Mia's face almost completely returned to normal, and she was fully rejuvenated. I'm overjoyed to see her smile again. David, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. I owe you one. It's nothing. I just did what anyone would. Mia thanked me, but I felt awkward and couldn't fully express my joy. The credit for restoring her face goes to my father and brother. I merely contacted my brother. I hadn't done anything else. Moreover, since that incident, I've been in touch more frequently with my father and brother, and we've even planned to have dinner together. I should be the one thanking Mia. Without you, I might not have received help from your family. You were there for me when I was hurt and in tears, David. Mia blushed and looked into my eyes intently. Well, do you have time today? I'd like to express my gratitude, so I'd be happy if you could join me tonight. My heart raced as I saw Mia blush. Nervously nodding to the unprecedented formal invitation to dinner, I saw Mia's cheeks relax into a happy smile. Subsequently, Mia and I began dating and eventually decided to get married. On our wedding day, Mia, dressed in a wedding gown, looked stunningly beautiful. We concluded our reception surrounded by the blessings of our family, colleagues, and friends. Surely, my mother was watching over us from heaven. Some time later, Mia gave birth to a baby girl. I was so thrilled I felt like jumping for joy at the sight of our adorable child. After losing my mother, I had immersed myself in work, but now my focus shifts to protecting my new family. I intend to shower my daughter with the same abundance of love that my mother had given me. And in this one-time journey of life, there will undoubtedly be unfair and challenging moments. During such times, I remind myself, it will all work out. Remembering my mother's words, I continue to live each day with my beloved family.